Welcome. My name is Father Mark Toups, a priest of the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux and a member of our Office of Parish Support Team, welcoming you today into a conversation about how to start small groups in your parish. As we in the Office of Parish Support continue to walk with you one parish at a time, listening to the needs that you have as you implement your own strategic plan in your parish, the question has come to us often about the practical steps necessary to start small groups in your parish. And per your request, we have produced this video, which is designed to answer two questions. First of all, a quick recap about why small groups are important. And secondly, what are the practical details necessary to start small groups in your parish? So let's start with the first. Let's quickly recap why small groups are so important. And of course, we go back to the word intentional. If we are going to move forward as a diocese, if your parish is going to move forward, then we have to be intentional about providing opportunities for people to grow spiritually in their relationship with God. Many people are going to do that on their own. It's going to happen spontaneously without the help of the parish. But if the parish is going to move forward, if the diocese is going to move forward, then that's not going to happen unless we are intentional. And if we're going to be intentional about helping people in their spiritual life, then we need a process that is intentional. It's intentionally designed to help people mature through, you might say, the different movements or stages of spiritual growth. And the best chance for that to happen is if people are walking with other people. And that's what small groups provide. Now, many people in your parish already know each other, but that doesn't mean that the relationships that they have are intentionally focused on helping people grow spiritually. Those relationships could just be familial. Those relationships could be, you might say, relational or friendship-based. But we need relationships in our life that are going to be intentionally focused on our spiritual growth. And that's what small groups do, because we have a much higher chance of success of growing spiritually and sustaining spiritual growth if we're in relationship with people. Now, I know that many of our parishes are thriving with a sense of community, but it's hard to know and be known by every member in the parish. Even the smallest of our parishes, which might have, 100 people, it's very difficult to sustain deep relationships with 100 people, much less if a parish is larger than that. But you can sustain intentional relationships about your spiritual growth with like 6 to 8 people. And that's what small groups provide, right? Small groups provide a place for people to connect with each other and then journey together. And we're bringing us back to the formation life cycle, where we want to help people connect with each other so that they can then encounter God. Then they can grow in their conversion, grow in their understanding of what it means to stay in a relationship with God or live in that conversion, and then be equipped for mission. So those 5 words are essential in the formation life cycle: to connect, encounter, conversion, grow, mission. And small groups are a great place for people to connect. It starts the process of spiritual growth. And this is what's bearing fruit across the country, and it's working in parishes that have already started. Many of our parishes in the diocese have already started small groups, and it's what's working in their parish right now, and it's bearing fruit. And if it's working in our diocese, in our parishes, then let's jump into a conversation about how do we start small groups in your parish. It's critical that you begin to enter into this part of the conversation to seeing the big picture. It's important for us to not just start something in the parish for the sake of starting it. It's important for us to ask, as we begin small groups in your parish, where are you heading down in the long run? Far too many times in the past, I have made the mistake of, instead of thinking things through all the way to the end, just starting something because it was a new or it was a good idea. And of course, I repent for that, but I've learned the hard way that if I don't have the end in mind, then we're going to start something probably without the resources necessary to sustain it long term. So where are we headed? That's a really good question with small groups. You don't want to just rush into starting small groups without building a strong foundation and thinking through what all the next steps are. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. At Christ the Redeemer, we were blessed with our first ACTS retreat. ACTS stands for Adoration, Community, Theology, and Service. It's a retreat movement like many other movements, whether that be the Cursillo movement or the Journey Towards Christ retreat. The concepts of that retreat are essentially very similar to those. And so as the men left the retreat, they were very, very excited. And now the men are looking at me as pastor asking, hey, what's next? Well, if I'm not ready to answer that question after the retreat, then what's going to happen is the experience inside the men's hearts is just going to atrophy and fade away, and the guys are going to go back to living life the way they did probably before the retreat, right? It's important for me to know what kind of follow-up are we going to have in place after the retreat. And as that retreat movement grows into not just 20 guys, but maybe one day 100 guys, that's going to be much bigger than one person, right? So if we are going to get people into small groups, the analogy is the same. It's one thing to have 2 or 3 small groups in your parish, because probably a person in your parish can probably make that happen. However, if you don't think through, what are you going to do one day if you have 20 or 30 or maybe even 50 small groups? And who's going to help manage all that? If we start off too quickly without thinking through the next steps, then we can find ourselves on the back end of this, not prepared to help people sustain their spiritual growth. The temptation would be to just get out there right now and to announce that we're going to start small groups at the end of Mass, and let's get as many people in small groups as you can. And well, that's going to happen one day. But the question is not if that should happen, as much as the question is when should that happen, right? It's important to recognize that parishes that are able to sustain small groups in the long term first took time to set things up before they started, so that they had the leadership and structures in place to sustain all that. There's going to be a lot that's got to happen up front, and that's going to seem that's really off the radar for a lot of your parishioners. They're not going to understand what you're doing behind the scenes, and I want to encourage you to know that that's okay. Continue to do what you're doing in your parish as you build structures behind the scenes. And as you build structures behind the scenes, what will happen is you will then be prepared eventually to share the vision for small groups. And then when you enroll them into a small group, you'll have everything in place to sustain their spiritual growth. So what do you need to have in place? We keep talking about we need to put things in place before you start. And I know you're anxious to start small groups. Let's first talk about what needs to be in place. The first thing is you need a team that can oversee the process and support the small groups well. That's really, really essential. We'll get to that in just a couple seconds. Number 2, you need enough small group leaders to facilitate the groups themselves. Small groups are usually as healthy as the small group leaders. You can have dynamic people who are in the small group who are sharing their hearts, but best practice research tells us that small groups are usually as healthy as the people who are leading them. The third thing you're going to want to do is you may, as you get some small groups started, then be able to have actual participants of the small group, like a pilot group or pilot groups, actually share some testimonies at Mass or after Mass or before Mass or in some way, so that lay people hear from other lay people who have had an experience of being in a small group. This is really important because for a lot of Catholics, the concept of small groups seems non-Catholic. It seems Protestant. It seems like a movement from the non-denominational church world. And of course, small groups go back all the way back to Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2, right after Pentecost. Small groups are very much a part of our Catholic history. For many of us, even in the diocese, we're familiar with Renew, but that's been off the radar for such a long time that it will be important for people to hear from other lay people as you begin to invite the larger parish into a small group. And those testimonies from people who have tasted it live will be helpful for you. And then finally, you want a real clear process in place for how you can populate and support future small groups in order that they constantly grow. So it's one thing to kick off small groups, but if you don't have things in place that are feeding it, then they're going to eventually kind of plateau in numbers. So for example, I just gave you the example of the Acts Men's Retreat here at Christ the Redeemer. If we continue to do that annually, maybe even twice a year, then when the men come off the retreat, they go straight into small groups. That's a way that you can continue to populate small groups in the future. So you might have people, you might host a parish retreat, and the participants after the retreat go into small group. You might host a mission trip, and after the mission trip, participants go into small group. You might host a bereavement ministry, and as you do that maybe once or twice a year in a very organized way, the participants in that ministry get into small group. It's a way of thinking in the parish where all the things you're already doing and maybe some new initiatives can eventually feed people into small group as a mechanism in the parish that is going to help people follow up, you might say, from things that are happening in the parish. Now, I was just talking about what you need in place, and not number one, that's on the screen right now, right? A team that can oversee the process and support the small groups well. That's what we call our adult formation team. Let's talk about who they are and what they do and why they're important. This is really, really important because only a few of our parishes are going to be able to have a staff member whose role it's going to be to oversee establishing small groups in a parish. Most of our parishes are not going to have a paid staff member who can do this, and so if that's going to happen, what we need is to bring together a team of people who will serve as a team, a volunteer team that's not on paid staff, that's going to be able to do the work and help the pastor so that there's not so much pressure on the pastor or the parish. This team is about 4 to 6 people, and their role is to get small groups started in the parish and then oversee the process of sustaining small groups on an ongoing basis, right? So they're going to help you get things off the ground, and they are then going to nurture those small groups long term. This could be from people that were in the parish missionary disciple training that was facilitated by the Catholic Leadership Institute in our diocese about a year ago. For those of you who are familiar with PMD, that's you. You would be an ideal candidate to be a part of a adult formation team in your parish. That's the first place to start. Many parishes already have these people trained, and many pastors have not yet been able to connect the dots that the PMD people would be great for an adult formation team. However, maybe there are other people who did not participate in that training who would be ideal for adult formation, and that's okay too. A lot of our parishes are going to need to add a few more people to the team anyway. Ideally, at least one of the people that would be added to this team have administrative and organizational skills. This charism of administration will be most helpful as groups are being organized and kept track of, right? So you can imagine that you're going to have maybe one day a master spreadsheet in the parish, right? Where you've got the name of every small group leader, and underneath that name are the names of the participants of that small group. Well, part of the adult formation team's job is going to be to track those small groups. Are they healthy? Are they doing well? Are they meeting regularly? Are they enjoying fruitful conversation? What support do they need? What questions do they have? You're going to need one person who's pretty organized to help the rest of the team just stay focused on what they're doing. Now, in the adult formation team, one of the tasks that they're going to have is helping launch small groups in the parish. And let's talk about what they're doing as we organize your adult formation team. The first thing that they are going to do is you're going to want to identify how many small group leaders you need to start. So if we're going to eventually start to train small group leaders, the question is, how many do you need in your first training? Well, you may want to look at your strategic plan. Many parishes have not only a goal for adult formation, but part of that goal was to specifically articulate how many small groups do we think we want to start with. Maybe some parishes say, we think we can start 4 small groups, or some parishes say we can start 6 small groups. Some parishes say we're going to start with 8 small groups. However many groups you start with, that's the number of small group leaders that you're going to need, and you're going to need a host that's going to help the parish do that. So again, if the goal for the first year in a parish, a random parish, was to have 6 small groups, you would need 6 group leaders and 6 hosts. We'll get into the role of the host in just a couple seconds, but essentially the small group leader facilitates the conversation. The host actually provides the atmosphere for the small group to be in. So let's say that Adam and Eve, 2 fictitious people. Adam is a small group leader, Eve is the host. And let's presume for the sake of this example that they're not married. So Adam is going to lead the small group discussion. Eve is going to provide a home for the small group to meet in, and is going to provide hospitality, have the coffee ready. If they're going to eat a meal together, then she coordinates the meal. If they're going to have snacks, then she coordinates the snacks. Whatever it is, one person provides the hospitality, the other provides the facilitation for the night itself. We'll get into these 2 roles in just a couple seconds, but I want to give you a heads up on that. All right. It will be beneficial to initially recruit 1 or 2 more people than the goal. In other words, if you want 6 small groups, go ahead and recruit 8 people. because some people might get into it and it's like, that's not really what I was looking for. Or some people, life might happen and they might get pulled out because of the circumstances of life. So whatever that might be, whatever your goal is, figure out how many small groups you want to start with at the end of the year one, and then recruit that many small group leaders and recruit that many hosts and one or two more people. Now, if I just said a lot of numbers and that's overwhelming for you to think that you would have to have that many new people, that's the role of the implementation team, is to help you in discerning who new volunteers might be. And that can be the work of the adult formation team, to work with the implementation team and the pastor, perhaps pray in a discernment rosary so that you're able to bring to the surface names of people in the future who might be interested in serving as small group leaders. Now, first step is to identify how many you need to start. The second step is to actually recruit those small group leaders. And then step 3 is going to be to recruit those hosts. So let's talk about step 2, recruiting small group leaders. Small group leaders help organize the group. They provide encouragement to the members in the small group. They offer communication about, that we're meeting this week at this time and things like that. Our homework from the last meeting was such and such, right? They're their communications gap to the rest of the small group. They help facilitate the discussion during the night so that the group moves along as small group discussion unfolds. So that's what a leader does. They organize the group, they encourage the group, they communicate to the group, and then they lead the conversation at the end of the night. A small group leader is not a teacher or a theologian, right? That's going to be the pressure on the resource. We don't need our small group leaders to be experts in theology. We just need them to love Jesus and to be docile to the Holy Spirit so that the Holy Spirit moves the group. A good small group leader is one who is able to kind of watch and notice what God's doing in the conversation, to let conversation go where God's leading it, or to redirect it back to places if God is not leading it, if somebody's off on a tangent or the conversation just kind of got off topic. And that's not what the Holy Spirit wanted us, right? So we don't need theologians as much as we need just people who can notice what God's doing. When you're recruiting your small group leaders, we'd recommend that you make it clear that you're only asking them to go through a pilot small group. In other words, we're just asking you to make like a 6-month commitment that will allow them the chance to experience a small group and grow in confidence to eventually one day be a leader. We're going to talk about what these pilot groups are in just a couple seconds, but you're not asking them for a 10-year commitment. You're just asking them to commit to one semester, right? So 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And at the end of that semester, they can make their decision of whether they want to do this long term. So step 1, you want to get your adult formation team organized by asking yourself, how many group leaders do you need? And then when you move into step 2, you want to recruit your small group leaders. Each small group leader is going to need a host to work with. And so we want to now, in step 3, talk about how do you recruit your host. Again, a host is going to work alongside the group leader. The host is someone who has a natural gift for hospitality. They may open their home for a small group to meet in their home, or if their small group is going to be in someone else's house, they're going to be the ones who go through the details of actually making sure that the night, the atmosphere for the night is conducive to good conversation. Again, they would be there to assure that there's a welcoming environment and would organize any food or refreshments for the group. Now, the small group leaders can find their own host. So, for example, if I were leading a small group and I have a really good friend of mine who I think would be great as a host, as a small group leader, I might actually talk to the host myself. I might actually sit down and watch this video with them, or there are other videos on our website that also would be helpful for you. However, as that conversation unfolds, I'm the one myself that might recruit my own host. Now, you're going to have some small group leaders who don't know any hosts, and so that's the job, you might say, of the adult formation team, working perhaps with the implementation team and the pastor to identify potential hosts in the parish. All right, so from the top, step 1, what you're going to do is just determine how many groups you need. Step 2, now recruit your small group leaders. Step 3, recruit your hosts. So again, just an example, a random parish. Let's say a parish says, at the end of our first year, we want 8 small groups active. That means the first thing they do is they recruit 8 small group leaders. and they get 8 hosts. Again, 8 is the eventual goal for the small groups. So they start with that many leaders and that many hosts, and they organize pilot groups. What's a pilot group? Once you've identified your small group leaders and hosts, you recommend them to go through the first semester of the video resource that we are producing in the Office of Parish Support. Again, the formation life cycle has 4 movements, right? Connect, encounter, conversion, grow, mission. And with each word, you might say connect, encounter, conversion, grow, mission, we're producing a video resource for small groups to kind of help them experience what God wants for people to experience when they're in that, you might say, that stage of their spiritual growth. So we've already produced a video resource on Connect that was released under the title of Made for More. We just finished filming the video resource for Encounter, and that's due to be released shortly after Labor Day. So as you identify those small group leaders and hosts, they're just going to go through the video resource once. They're going to be their own little pilot group, right? What this does is this allows the facilitators and the host to go through the process together before they do it live, you might say. So they're going to kind of go through a test run of it first, and then once they've been through that, we can offer some additional training, and then they'll be equipped to actually have their own groups. Again, so the example, if you have 8 small group leaders and 8 hosts, that's 16 people, you're going to split them up into 2 different groups, right? So you'll have 2 small groups of 8 people in a small group. They would go through the first semester of a video resource, which we have on Connect, and they would learn in that environment how to eventually lead one day their own small group. And the feedback that we've received from parishes who have done this has been awesome. Parishes who have had the pilot groups first and then launched their own small groups are feeling much more confident about the process. All right, so step 5, once those groups have gone through their own pilot version, their pilot semester, they've gone through the resource themselves once, then they begin to recruit their own small groups, right? So after finishing the semester with the pilot group, a small group leader and an assigned host would begin recruiting their own small groups. Again, each small group eventually is going to be about 6 to 8 people. So again, let's take the example. You have a small group leader and you have a host, that's 2 people. At this stage of the game, what they would do is they themselves would personally invite 6 more people into their group. And so until they have a group fully, you might say, participating of 8 total people, they themselves would provide the personal invitation. This is also coming from our research in our parishes, in our diocese. It's one thing to have best practice research across the country, but what we're seeing with our people and our diocese is that this is working. The personal invitation is the number one thing that's getting people into small groups. And so after the pilot semester, the leaders and the hosts would have some personal invitations for people to join their group. Again, this group may be 6 to 8 people, friends, family, or perhaps names given to you by the parish. A lot of it is going to be friends and family because if people already have an existing relationship, they're more apt to trust the invitation. Again, it's important for us as we are in this stage of the conversation to know that it's going to be different for some people, and in that invitation, they might need help. This video right here or the videos we have on the Office of Parish Support may be helpful as small group leaders are inviting potential participants into their new small groups. And then step 6, you're going to want to launch those groups, right? After you have your small group member, it's time to start. The group leader may want to confirm with group members a time and place to meet, right? So again, if I'm the small group leader of my small group, I'm going to want to connect with my people. We got to make sure that we're all on the same page of what day we're going to be meeting, what time we're going to be meeting, and where we are going to be meeting. And a group can determine how often they want to meet. Most groups, the most successful groups, meet once a week. And our video resources are usually about 6 to 7 weeks in duration. So you can imagine a small group is going to be meeting once a week for about 6 to 7 weeks. Then they take a break. How long the break is up to the small group. Some small groups take a break for maybe a month, and then they start the next video resource. Some small groups meet during Lent. They take a break for the summer, and they come back and they do something in the fall. So how often groups meet is really up to the group. As long as people are just journeying with each other, that's really the most important thing. The adult formation team members should be regularly checking in with the small groups, right, to encourage them to see if they need assistance. So that's one of the big things that the adult formation teams are going to do, is just to provide support on an ongoing basis to them so that they are able to feel that they can succeed. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you are watching this in August, on Saturday, August the 10th, we are hosting a one-day training for adult formation teams. Would love for you to join us for that. The number you can reach Joe Claypatch at is 850-3155. Let us know if you are interested in joining us for that adult formation teams training. Again, it's been great being with you in this video. If you need ongoing support, don't be afraid to call Joe Claypatch at the Office of Parish Support. 850-3155 is his number. His email is up there on the screen. He would love to help you. That's what we're here to do in the Office of Parish Support, is to support you. Looking forward to being with you. Another resource is, hey, be not afraid and jump into small groups. Let the Lord guide you, because it's changing lives, and we're here to walk with you through the process. God bless you.